yaha pratītya-samutpādaḥ śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe sa prajñaptir upādāya pratipat saiva madhyamā.
Yaha pratītya-samutpādaḥ śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe sa prajñaptir upādāya pratipat saiva madhyamā. MMK chapter 24 verse 18. Whatever dependent arising there is, we call that emptiness. This teaching, when made one's own, is the middle path itself. So, whatever dependent arising there is, yaha pratītya-samutpādaḥ. So yaha means whatever. And pratītya means depending, going back to. The verb pratītya means to go back to. In that sense, to go back to a cause, to depend on. And upādāya is as in the previous verse. Upādāya means going up, arising. And sam, the addition of the prefix sam, it means going up together, actually. So pratītya-samutpādaḥ, when I first started studying those words, seemed to suggest to me what I'm pursuing every day by sitting in zazen and applying the principles of the FM Alexander technique, which is centered on this going up. But going up is not just a function of an individual ultimately going up. It can't just be a function of an individual. Even though Alexander wrote his most important book, he called it Constructive Conscious Control of the Individual. So the individual is very much emphasized in Alexander's work. But ultimately, when you reflect on it, going up is a function of gravity. You know, without Mother Earth and 1G, you haven't got anything to go up against. So going up is a upādāya. Truly, is always a samutpādaḥ. It's going up with everything else. Like in Latin, sam is con. You know, so it's together, going up together. So going up together. How do you realise what that means? Everything going up together. Well, in Alexander work, we talk about staying back in your back, because you can't really understand what it is to go up together, but you can glean some insights more into what it doesn't mean. And what it doesn't mean to go up together is, for example, to end gain, to be in a furious hurry to get a result. And that kind of end gaining is generally associated with what is called in Alexander terms losing your back. And losing your back that's a good example of losing your back. Pushing your chest forward into the future, pulling your head back into the past, and generally sort of, instead of being in one piece, it's separating yourself into 2 or 3 parts by discombobulating the back. So going up together has to do with staying back in your back, and staying back in your back has to do with letting the head go forward and up. So not pulling the head back in any way, letting the head go forward. And I can let my head go forward by doing that, but that's forward and down. So what I want is something which I can't do, which is to allow the head to go forward and up. So what I was saying is that explaining pratītya has to do with going back. It means going, philosophically talking about causes, it means going back to previous links in the chain of dependent arising of suffering. So prati, as in pratītya, is also the root of pratyaya, which means cause, sometimes translated as conditions, but really has more to do with causation, so indirect causes. So in this verse, on the face of it anyway, pratītya-samutpādaḥ is the teaching of dependent arising, which has to do with causality. But this may not be the best place to put my own pet theory forward about it, but when I first read the words pratītya-samutpādaḥ, their hidden meaning for me has to do with what I'm actually endeavouring to practice every morning and even right now. So to be going up altogether by staying back, or by going back to directions, going back to awareness of the whole body while breathing in, while breathing out, and then through that going back to the principle, to the teaching that the whole body is a convenient fiction. The whole body is a saṁskāra. And what we're really dealing with ultimately in practice is empty dharmas. So, ya pratītya-samutpādaḥ, whatever dependent arising there is. So ya pratītya-samutpādaḥ is nominative, singular, masculine. And a nominative phrase like that in Sanskrit can sometimes just be translated there is. So purushaha, there is a person. Ya pratītya-samutpādaḥ, whatever dependent arising there is. Yaha purushaha, whatever person there is. Śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe. Pracakṣmahe is third person plural. Pracakṣ, to call. So we call śūnyatāṁ, emptiness. Accusative singular feminine. Śūnyatāṁ, emptiness. Tam, agreeing with śūnyatāṁ, that. Śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe, we call that emptiness. Yaha pratītya-samutpādaḥ, śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe. Whatever dependent arising there is, we call that emptiness. So this is a big line for understanding what emptiness is and what dependent arising is in MNK. Things are empty, that is to say, what we conceive of as things in our ignorance are in fact empty dharmas. What we conceive of non-empty things, but in fact what we conceive as such are actually empty because they're dependently arisen. They don't exist as things unto themselves. They are arisen, going back to, they spring up depending on what is not them. Sa-prajñaptir upādāya. Sa-prajñaptir. Prajñapti is feminine, so sa means this or that, feminine. So sa-prajñaptir, nominative, singular feminine, this teaching, this instruction, this information. Upādāya. Upādāya is a difficult word to translate generally wherever it appears because of its ambiguity. It's got a positive and a negative connotation. The negative connotation, so da means to give, and ada means to give this way, in towards oneself. So upādāya means to appropriate to oneself. So it means, it has connotations of clinging and attachment, as in the word upādāna, which is, I think, the 10th link, the 9th or the 10th link in the dependence arising of suffering. So it has that connotation of attachment, upādāya. But it also suggests bringing something into practice, making something one's own in practice. It has that positive connotation. So the final verse of MMK says, sarva-dṛṣṭi-prahāṇāya ya saddharmam adeśayat anukampām upādāya tam namasyāmi gautamam. The third pada, anukampām upādāya, means making compassion his own, or ironically it means attaching to compassion, depending on compassion. Sometimes with an accusative, upādāya means by means of, so by the practical means of, or with the help of compassion. So in that pada, upādāya could be understood either with a positive connotation or with an ironic negative connotation, as if to say, the Buddha was attached to compassion. Sa prajñaptir upādāya, this teaching, when made one's own, pratipat saiva madhyamā. Pratipat is path, feminine. So saiva is sa. So sa in this case means that or itself. It's emphatic, and so is eva emphatic. So pratipat-saiva, the path itself, and madhyamā is feminine, agreeing with pratipat, feminine nominative, singular. Madhyamā means middle, as in the title of Mula Madhyamaka Karika. Madhya means the middle. So pratipat-saiva madhyamā is the middle path itself. Sa prajñaptir upādāya pratipat-saiva madhyamā. So this second line, this teaching, when made one's own, is the middle path itself, resonates with their MMK chapter 26 verse 10, where he says, avidyāyā nirodhas tu jñānasyāsyaiva bhāvanāt. So he says, that means, but the stopping of ignorance is through the cultivation of understanding of just this. And just this refers to avidyāyāṁ, niruddhāyāṁ, saṁskārāṇām, asaṁbhavaḥ. Where ignorance has been stopped, there is a non-coming into being of saṁskāras. Okay, so that's really important understanding of MMK. The stopping of ignorance, where ignorance has been stopped, there is a non-coming into being of saṁskāras. So in Alexander terms, this is when everything's going up and you're not interfering, you're not doing anything. You're not conceiving of any separate samskara, any separate thing. So the first line is a kind of description of a perfect condition. It's like my Alexander teacher Marjorie Barlow used to say, you're all perfect apart from what you're doing. Okay, so avidyāyāṁ, nirodhāyāṁ, saṁskārāṇām, asaṁbhavaḥ. This is describing, the sun's shining, you're going up like 1 o'clock, everything's in the flow. But avidyāyā nirodhas tu jñānasyāsyaiva bhāvanāt. But the stopping of ignorance is through the cultivation of understanding of asaṁbhavaḥ. This really. So it's not I mean, sometimes you hear amateur sports people wax lyrical in the way I've just been doing about everything's flowing and so on. But, you know, when you listen to a professional sports person, you know, they're talking about what it really means, you know. So it's a different level. It means it's beyond the level of bullshit. Let's put it like that. It's really understanding what stopping ignorance. Avidyāyā nirodhas tu jñānasyāsyaiva bhāvanāt. See, this is the great thing about Nagarjuna. He explains it so much more clearly and concisely than I do when I'm struggling to put it into words. But the stopping of ignorance is through the cultivation of understanding of what this really is. I'm trying to clarify what upādāya means. This teaching, when made one's own. So he's saying not by reading a book or not by doing a YouTube video, although that might be part of it. How do you make this teaching your own? Ya pratītya-samutpādaḥ śūnyatāṁ pracakṣmahe. Whatever dependent arising there is, we call that emptiness. How do you make that teaching your own? By walking the middle path. Yeah, not by talking the middle path, by walking the middle path. So, for example, now, rarely in my lifetime have the divisions between left and right been so clear politically. So, you know, Jordan Peterson speaks to this very, very eloquently in the political sphere. And so let's take the example of responsibility for suffering. Does it exist or not? So on the left, you tend to have, let's say, compassionate women, if we indulge in the sexual stereotypes. So on the left, you've got people who virtue signal compassion to each other and think compassion is the most important thing. So they tend to de-emphasize individual responsibility. Okay, so criminals are born into criminal families, they have a hard time, you know, they're discriminated against and so on and so forth. So there's a de-emphasis of individual responsibility. Now on the right, you have the opposite view, and you know, lock them all up, and there's the kind of hyper responsibility, you know. So if you're suffering, it's your own damn fault, you know. And there's truth in that. There's truth in both sides, but the real truth is in the middle. So that responsibility for suffering, there is individual responsibility for suffering, but it doesn't exist as a thing in itself. So, as Jordan Peterson recommends, every person should pick up their damn cross and carry it up the hill to the best of their ability. That's affirming individual responsibility. But not as a non-empty thing. This is the important philosophical point. This is the teaching of the middle. The teaching of the middle is that non-existence of individual responsibility is a wrong view. It's the ucceda-dṛṣṭi in Sanskrit, the view of negation, the view of annihilation, the view that responsibility does not exist. And the opposite view is śāsvata-dṛṣṭi, the eternity view, because that says, like, if your responsibility for something, and your blame, if you make a mistake, that's for keeps. Because, you know, if a thing actually exists, if individual responsibility exists, if it's a self-existing thing, it's not susceptible to change. So on the right there, that's taking you into an impractical kind of heavy responsibility, a heavy guilt kind of mode of thinking. So the teaching of emptiness, if we make it our own, if we understand what Nagarjuna is saying, that will lead actually to a middle path in politics as well, because people will see that if we take this example of leftist compassion versus rightist emphasis on individual responsibility, if we can see the fault in both views, that will lead in practice to walking the middle path. And by the same token, it's only by actually walking the middle path that we'll understand what emptiness is. It's inductive and deductive, seeing the principle and putting it into practice, and perhaps more pertinently, going into practice, and then we'll see the principle. And this again relates to Jordan Peterson's emphasis on, tidy your room. Start by tidying your room. So practice first, then you'll get the point of emptiness. Yaha pratītya-samutpādaḥ śūnyatāṁ tam pracakṣmahe sa prajñaptir upādāya pratipat saiva madhyamā. MMK chapter 24 verse 18. Whatever dependent arising there is, we call that emptiness. This teaching, when made one's own, is the middle path itself.